Alrighty, guys, welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Feminists. As always, I'm your host, Scout.
And I'm Lily.
And today in the studio, we have two very special guests with us.
Professor Flex, real name Cheyenne Riggs.
And I am Snack Trap. My real name is Meg Miramontes.
They are part of our OKC's own Victory Dolls roller derby team. And this week we'll be talking about, roller derby and specifically the movie Whip It. Those of y'all who haven't seen Whip It, it is a movie starring Ellen Page, the lovely Ellen Page, and her journey into discovering roller derby and finding out that that's her passion. Lily, do you have anything to add about that specifically?
No, just that we viewed it, and I thought it was a pretty good movie. I don't know how accurate it is in terms of what roller derby is actually like, but I think we're going to figure that out.
Alrighty, well, let's actually find out about that. What do you guys think about that? Accurate? Not accurate?
In terms of accuracy, it kind of depends on how you look at it. I think that when Derby first resurfaced back in about 2001 in Austin, that for that version of Derby, the movie is much more accurate. And even though they don't really set a time period in Whip It, you can somewhat infer that it's set in the early 2000s. I think it was actually produced in 2005, 2007?
I think 2007 sounds right. Because I'm pretty sure I saw it when it came out, I feel like. I'm going to go something in the mid-2000s.
Somewhere in there. So the sport has not only grown exponentially in the past decade and a half, but it has also changed quite a bit.
Yes. So I think the main difference between Whip It and what you would normally see in Derby on a more mainstream level is that the tracks are very different. So in Whip It, it's on a banked track.
Or is it the slope?
The big elevated track.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas most Derby is on a flat track, just on a flat surface.
Okay.
Which, it's like we play on a flat track.
Okay.
It's really one of the biggest reasons why Derby has become such a huge phenomenon is because of the flat track option.
Oh, okay.
It's much easier to, set up a flat track in like a YMCA that you're able to rent.
Sure, yeah.
Than have to,
build something like that. Yeah.
Buy a bank track.
Buy it or build it, store it, set it up, take it down. In the movie, they mostly have what appears to be their own practice space as well as their own bouting space. They call it the warehouse, I think, in the movie. Yeah. And there are some leagues that have a warehouse. We certainly would love to have a warehouse of our own
I'm
for
certain,
our own practice
We're
space.
looking for sponsors all the time.
Give us money to play roller derby. But most leagues don't have that, and so in terms of cost efficiency, to make Derby more available to the quote-unquote masses, something had to give in terms of the bank track. So I think last I heard there was only maybe a dozen leagues across the U.S. that still skate on a bank track, and there's probably, I think the Women's Roller Derby Flat Track Association has over 400 leagues now that skate flat track. So it's definitely that has enabled Derby to spread the way that it has.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I honestly had no idea there was such a difference. I mean, I guess that makes sense. I was kind of thinking while we were watching the movie, like, that's a very specific space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very specific arena and the kind of thing that you would have to, like I said, build, set up, tear down, et cetera, and it takes a lot of cash flow just to maintain a track. We did absorb 2 or 3 years ago, not absorb, but merge with the Oklahoma City Outlaws, who was our last remaining bank track league. So for a while, our league actually did have a bank track in storage that was ultimately sold.
Oh, okay.
And many of our skaters that are still around from that league skated and got their start on a bank track.
Wow. Okay, so speaking of the league, how many teams are in the local league now? It's like, I know y'all, who do you bout with?
So our league So our league is the Oklahoma Victory Dolls.
Okay,
and
okay.
then within the league, we have 2 travel charters, an A team and a B team.
Meaning that those are competitive and that you try
Right.
out for these, and then
Okay.
we travel and compete around the U.S. The primary travel charter, the All-Stars, compete internationally for rankings, and our B team, which is what Snacks and I both skate for, is still a competitive team, meaning you have to try out to get onto it, but we don't quite compete for rankings yet, but we still travel for tournaments.
Okay. Where's the last tournament y'all went to?
We just got back from Colorado.
Yep. Just north of Denver. I forget the town.
It was in Longmont.
Yes,
Mhm.
Longmont, Colorado. That was kind of our season closer, if you will. Our season usually ends in August. This was a somewhat late tournament, so we went into a few weeks of off season, and now we're back preparing for December tryouts. But to add on to that, so we have the 2 competitive charters, the A and the B, and then we have what we call our home teams. So everyone is on a home team regardless of skill level. Once you pass what we call the minimum skills or the minimum skating requirements needed to safely play roller derby, to skate, to stop, to hit, etc., you are assigned to a home team. And those home teams either play each other or they play like local smaller leagues. So we play a lot with Lawton. 580 is the name of Lawton's team. We play Enid, we play South Central, which is Ada's team, and Roughnecks, which is Tulsa's team.
Okay, I think I've heard of the Roughnecks at least, so that very cool. Okay, considering y'all just came back from a tournament, you seem like you're in pretty good shape. From what I saw in the movie, it seemed like every time you came out of a bout, you might be bleeding a little bit. Can you talk to us about injuries you guys have sustained in roller derby?
Oh, goodness. Have you had any real, thorough injuries?
Sprained ankle.
Injuries.
Thorough injuries.
Sprains are the worst.
Yeah, I'd rather have broken my ankle than sprained it, honestly.
Oh, boy.
It's a running joke that, when you break your ankle, you got to cast it and you got to stay off of it, and then it heals and it's all better. When you sprain it, you keep walking on it, you think it'll get better, and then 7 years go by and it doesn't.
Oh,
It's
man.
never the same. Yeah, so it's a full contact sport on wheelie shoes where you do weird things that your body does not naturally do. And we do a lot of training, before you can even begin to play the sport. You do, ours is
12 weeks.
Our 12 week new recruits class. It's like a boot camp where twice a week you go and gently learn the ways of derby by learning all the small skills that turn into gameplay. But so while we train for all these things, injuries do happen, as any sport does, especially when you get to the more competitive levels and you're playing more and more, plus cross training. I try to do 5 active days a week.
Wow.
As well as practice. Mm-hmm. We have 2 or 3 days of practice a week.
2.5 hours of practice a week. Plus, usually tacking on another 2 to 3 days of lifting or cardio, or 2 a days if you can handle the time commitment to work out in the morning and go to practice that evening. And that's really, that can scare some people away, but that's really if you want to be at the competitive level, if you want to play at the competitive level. If you just want to play at the home team level, we only require 1 practice a week during the on season, and the expectations aren't as high, so it's more of a recreational play, which is nice because our league kind of allows for various levels of play depending on your commitment and ability.
Yeah, that actually sounds really cool because I don't know. Ever since I saw Whip It when I was younger, I was like, man, I want to do that, but I'm a little too scared.
Yeah. So one of the other main differences between Whip It and there's a couple I kind of wanted to talk about, and Snacks can obviously jump in. One of them is that in the movie, she's kind of thrown into tryouts on her Barbie skates, right?
Yes.
Which is adorable, but it provides
It makes for a good story.
It makes for a good story, but it provides this misconception. It creates this misconception that we don't train you, that we're only looking for people that already know how to skate and play derby. And if that were the case, we wouldn't have people in our league. Very few of us grew up skating. Very few of us ever touched a pair of quads before we came to our new recruit class. We learned from the ground up. So we don't throw you into tryouts. We train you spend about 3 months just going through the basic skill set. And even then, tryouts is really just testing your minimum skills to make sure you can safely play.
And even if you did grow up skating, because I grew up rollerblading, playing hockey, doing figure skating, and it was still, like, I'd never been on quad skates. And the things that you do for derby, the way that that strategy has changed, the things that you do strategically are just not normal things that you would do in roller skates.
Yeah.
It's things that we have specifically trained to do to stop weird ways and lean into someone else's body. That was a tangent because we were talking about injuries.
Oh, yeah. Well, the other thing in terms of kind of comparisons to Whip It is that the physicalities in Whip It are much more similar to like the 70s and 80s style of derby, which was actually, for the most part, staged.
Yeah.
It was like not amateur wrestling.
It was like WWE wrestling.
Okay, I had no idea.
Yep. Yes, so if you can actually Google some of that old stuff. There's a pretty cool one called Rock and Roller Games, where if they tie, they have to skate around an alligator pit, and the first one to fall in the alligator pit loses. We don't have alligators.
Sadly. We don't have the budget.
I feel like we could draw a bigger crowd.
If we had the budget.
Sponsors, alligators. So in the movie, it really seems to be almost a blend of the old school derby that a lot of older folks kind of come up to us and want to talk to us about, like, oh, do you elbow people in the face? Do you trip people? Like,
yeah, there did seem to be a lot of that going on.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Pulling hair.
Derby, the way it's played now, even with all that padding and all the rules against hitting people in the head and tripping people, it's still pretty much 100% injury rate. Like, you're gonna twist an ankle at some point. We're not trying to add to that by, elbowing people in the forehead. So it's not a thing that you're even remotely allowed to do. And in fact, if you did, you'd be kicked out of the game, period.
Yeah.
So
well, that's good to know.
It's a full contact sport. We're not trying to like egregiously maim people.
And like I said, the old school derby, they did that. But again, it was staged. They knew it was coming.
They knew how to roll off blows and take falls.
The clotheslines, the jumps, the tackles, that was all staged by incredible, athletic skaters, but still.
Sure. Okay. All right. I want to talk a little bit more about the basic skills of roller derby, but let's go to a quick music break first. We guys are going to play it out with I can't tell if it's Alicia Keys or Florence and the Machine, but you'll get both. Alrighty, guys, and we are back. If you are just joining us, this is the Pop Culture Feminist, and in the studio with us today we have very special guests, Professor Flex and Snack Trap of the OKC Victory Dolls. And we're talking about roller derby. Okay, so we promised that we would talk a little bit more about the basic skills of, training and what it takes to be safe to play.
So the skills that most leagues follow are outlined by the WFTDA, the Women's Flat Track Roller Derby Association. WFTA or WFTDA or however you want to say it. That's the kind of the umbrella organization that most derby leagues fall under. They have outlined sort of a document that lists minimum skills necessary, mostly skating skills, to safely play roller derby. That can include 2 or 3 different kinds of stops. That includes being able to both take a hit and to give a hit while being stable and not
properly.
Falling down. Right. To move laterally from one side of the track to the other. So it's not only about skating strides forward, but being able to move from the inside line to the outside line. Weaving through cones with a time limit. What else is there besides laps?
Isn't there something called, I'm going to get this wrong, I know I am, 27 and...
The 27 and 5, yes.
Yeah.
So there is a 27. So that's the one thing that a lot of new skaters kind of dread, especially if they haven't been previously active, because it requires a mix of technique and cardio endurance.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's called the 27 and 5 because it's 27 laps in 5 minutes from a stop, so without a rolling start.
It's not. A lot of people get stuck mentally on 27 and 5 because it seems like this impossible thing, but it's more than the like endurance requirement of it. It's very much your like stance and technique. So once you can do like a proper crossover, that's where you cross one foot over the other and push out with the other foot.
Okay.
That's really where most of your power for doing 27 and 5 comes from. So a lot of people who can't get low enough to do a proper crossover have a really hard time with it, and that's really where it is. If you can properly do a crossover, you can properly do 27 and 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
But everyone's so afraid of it.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
I think the other reason that a lot of people get stuck on it is, at least in my experience, maybe you've had a different experience, but the Derby seems to attract a lot of women that have not previously played sports. There are a lot of women that are attracted.
That would explain why I'm interested in Derby.
Me
I don't
too.
feel less alone.
Yeah, there are a lot of women who are attracted to Derby because of, honestly, the film, Whip It, or the culture, or they have seen themselves as being outcasts and are looking for a place to fit in. They're attracted to, for some reason, the culture in one way or another. And in my personal new recruit class, there were 12 of us, and only myself and one other had ever played a sport in their lives. And that, from me kind of asking around, just from not, an official poll or anything, that kind of does seem to be a trend. I don't know if you had that experience or not. Snacks.
I think so. Most people in my new recruits class, which was large, I transferred from another league in Michigan, and I think we started with something like 30 people. And I would say the vast majority of people also had not played another sport. I think there was like 4 or 5 people who had skated before or done anything at all. But that being said, most of us start Derby later in our 20s.
Yeah.
So even if you had, it's been a good, 5, 6, 10, 15 years.
Unless you're currently active doing something else,
Sure.
lifting or something, which some people are and some people aren't. So,
which is why the gentle embrace of new recruits class is so important.
It is, but that can also kind of help explain the whole 27 and 5 and why some get stuck on it. It's a little bit mental, but I think that there is a bit of a physical hurdle that can be a taller hurdle for those that have not been previously physically active. It's not an insurmountable hurdle by any means, but it's there.
Correct. So one thing I wanted to ask is, in the movie, she is 17, and she lies about her age because she's supposed to be 21 to play. And I was just going to ask, is there a minimum age? Is there a maximum age? Like, what kind of structure is there for that?
There is a minimum age, 18, which is just legally, no one's going to sue you, basically.
Sure.
Age. There are a few leagues that do junior derby or have a junior derby component. We do not, but even that requires kind of a parental. No, but you can't cross them, right? You can't have junior skaters crossed with adult skaters in the same league. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking that as they played. I'm like, even after they find out that she's 17, they're like, oh, with a parent's permission, we'll just let you play. And I'm like, that doesn't seem kosher.
Only with the magic of Hollywood.
Yeah. I mean, well, that was like a lot of those plays in the movie, where they would just stop and completely clothesline someone as part of like their play. Sure. And I was like, that didn't seem
yeah,
that's just not very nice.
Yeah. Sounds like fun. Not a thing you can do.
The only time I've closed someone was on accident because I was falling backwards.
Oh yeah, I think we've all done stuff like that on accident. Like I've hit and been hit square in the face many times, and it's never on purpose.
Yeah. All right, so you were kind of talking earlier about how people feel attracted to the community aspect of it. You want to tell us a little bit about what that culture is like, what the other people in Derby? How close you guys are or anything like that, especially on your own team?
What are your feelings about Derby Flex?
Well, snacks. So Derby has kind of built itself on being an inclusive community. That's something that the WFTDA promotes very widely. As a result, I think that we harbor and also attract a lot of gender fluid sort of individuals, people that maybe they're straight, maybe they're gay, maybe they aren't sure what they identify with. And Derby and our league especially, we're very much open to that. We welcome them. That is, the heart and soul of what we do. And what what WIFTA does and what this community is really very much built on. So in terms of closeness to each other, I think that just kind of, you get into any organization this size and you make friends. You travel with these people, you share hotel rooms, and, you're crammed in 4 or 5 to a room. Like, you can't help but get to know each other and hang out with each other and, go to each other's weddings and, do this and that with each other. And that's, definitely like a huge bonus, a huge benefit of it is to kind of have this like built-in community that you can, spend time with, rely on, make lasting relationships with, meet your significant other through.
I did. I met my fiance through Derby.
Ooh, wait, tell us that story. That's adorable.
So my partner is a ref, and we met through my league in Ann Arbor, and we had known each other for a good 3 years. I was a skater, he was a ref. I knew him in what I would say was a very professional capacity for about 3 years. He was the person that gave me penalties, and I would ask like kind of smug questions to pretty often.
Sure.
Like I would like some clarification on that penalty on turn 3
that I definitely didn't get, by the way. Did not earn that penalty.
Oh, that's what you saw?
Oh, okay. Well, that's not what happened.
Thank you for your time. That's not I'm much more respectful than that. But yes, so I was actually interested in reffing because I had injured myself. I had broken my ankle, and then right after breaking my ankle, started school full-time and working full-time, so I didn't have a ton of time with all of that to also do Derby. So after I healed up, I was investigating maybe doing reffing instead of being a skater, because I thought that was less of a time commitment, but that is not the case. Roller derby refs are so committed and put so much time into being educated about rules changes and go through strategies all the time. It's insane. But so I had reached out to him to ask about ref stuff. Turns out he is the best human in the world. And we went and got beers to talk about ref stuff, and I begrudgingly fell in love with him. It was not part of my life plan.
They actually got engaged at the tournament we just came back from.
Yeah. Oh, so this is a brand new engagement.
A very new engagement.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
cute.
Congratulations.
It's on the internet.
The video's on YouTube.
Oh, okay. We're going to have to
YouTube,
watch that later.
It's on our Facebook page.
Yes.
Okay. We're absolutely going to have to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It was very cute. I was very surprised.
That's the best way. Yeah. Okay, so I was kind of curious, what brought you guys into Derby? How did you find your way to this magnificent but kind of lesser known sport?
So I had seen like things on social media about Derby, and I think I had seen even like a CSI episode or something.
Oh, where she gets killed with a derby skate? Or killed with wheels or something?
Something like that.
I think I've heard of this.
That might have even been after. There were, like, I had seen mentionings of roller derby in like pop culture talking stuff. And, but it was all very like Whippet style, like fishnets and short skirts and costumes and face paint and stuff. And I was like, I like the idea of this sport on wheels because I was always a big skater, and I, was kind of missing something in my life at the time. Like, I was in a really bad relationship. I had dropped out of school, and I was looking for, something empowering. And Derby kind of seemed like it, but not in that fashion. And I actually was seeing more and more pictures from a friend, a Facebook friend that I'd met through like labor organizing, who she was on the A travel team for the league in my area in Michigan. And she would post all these pictures of them in these like uniforms and all of her cross training stuff and the drills they were doing because she was their captain at the time. And I was like, oh, this is the Derby that I am about.
Yeah.
So I went and so I asked more about it and was like, what is this Derby? What do I do? And within a week, I had like traded in my old snowboard for some like really cheap Derby skates at Play It Again Sports that like fell apart by the end of
oh boy
new recruits training. But yeah, it was definitely the best thing that I've ever done for myself in my life because of the community that we had talked about,
right.
And was just such a empowering environment for me to be in, full of like body positivity and just so many women just there supporting each other toward this like amazing goal of just being the best you that you can be. And I think that is the most important thing that I've had in my life, I think. So how about you, Flex?
Well, Snacks. It's so fun. I love doing that.
Thank you, Flex.
I was living in Austin. I was in grad school and working 2 jobs and basically just completely over-encumbered. Went to the Texas roller derby. There's 2 leagues in Austin, and I can never remember which one's bank tracked and which one's not, but I believe it was TXRD.
Some fan you are.
Yeah, I believe it was TXRD. So, and they played, like I was kind of talking earlier before the show began, they played the more what you might think of when you see Whippet, the fishnets and tutus, and they each had, there were the cherry bombs who had a theme, and there were, I can't remember all the different themes, but they're still around.
Much like the Hurl Scouts.
Yes, like that wasn't one of their themes, but it could very easily have been, right? It was that style. Mm-hmm. And they all had this crazy makeup on, but they could also all skate. They were all very athletic. And it was on a banked track. It was in some sort of a warehouse in North Austin. I can't remember exactly. And they did lots of crazy things, like there was a penalty wheel, and they were leg wrestling and pillow fights, and the announcer had this like fake stuffed dragon on her shoulder. It was nuts. And I was like, I want all of that for me. Like right now. I can't skate, but I want to do this right now. At the time, however, I was young, broke, and basically doing something 60 hours a week. It just wasn't going to happen. So it ended up sort of getting shelved until I moved to Oklahoma to take a position here at OU in fall of 2015. And somebody, I think as simple and boring as tagged me in the Facebook event for the new recruits class for spring of 2016. And I showed up expecting tutus and a bank track and stuffed shoulder dragons and whatever else, and ended up getting something completely different, but that ultimately I like a lot more for a lot of the reasons that Snacks just discussed. You don't feel like you're on display. You don't feel like an exhibit or a spectacle. You feel like an athlete, and you're treated like an athlete much more, I think, than the league that I saw play in Austin.
Which I think is... Sorry, I was way far away from the microphone. Adjusting. And I think that there's a big debate within Derby itself. And every Derby community, like every Derby league happens kind of within the community that it resides. And there's a lot of debate around like what Derby should be. And each league kind of gets to decide that for themselves. And we even kind of have different expectations or different options for what Derby gets to be for you between our charter leagues that go out and compete on, a more, I guess, professional level, a more athletic level. We have strict uniform guidelines. We, are expected to eat a certain way and cross train. But then for like home teams, you know, you're allowed to wear face paint. You can wear, you know, frilly patterned bottoms or whatever you want. You can wear the fishnets. You can do the fun things you want. And, you know, you can dress sexy. But also, like, what is sexy to me is different from how someone else is going to present themselves. Like, their feminism might be different from my feminism. And how that presents, how they present that. So, I don't know. Yeah. There's no wrong derby.
Right. I think you kind of touched on this already, but how do you feel that roller derby empowers you as a woman?
So, I think, so before derby, I had a lot of, like, body issues. I think derby empowers me in a lot of ways. I don't know if we have enough time
for all the ways.
Well, that sounds wonderful.
I think a really big one is the way that I view like my strength and my body now. How I've kind of reclaimed my body from going, like, I was raised in a way that was very judgmental, and like the women in my life were always on diets, and you know, it was always, if you work out, don't get too muscular. And derby really derby really helped me realize that, like, my body is for doing cool things. Like, my body is mine to do the things that make me happy. And I like to go fast, and I like to feel strong. And I loved going to practice and having everyone talk about, like, look at how big your thighs are getting. You look so strong. Or like, it's not someone like pointing at my butt and being like, your butt is getting so big. It's like, your butt is getting so big. Glutes. Yeah, look at those ham gams. Ham gams is my favorite thing. So, I think just being in a sport where like everybody is everybody is doing what it needs to do, and we're all just like, everybody can do derby, and no one is like, it's not tolerated for people to be like, she needs to lose some weight. Like, that's not okay. That's not accepted within our within this community. Like, there are people at the D1 level, you know, top 4 who like, every player on every team looks vastly different in shape, and they're all kicking butt. So
it's actually pretty neat to see that, because you can think about, you know, in the movie Whip It, Ellen Page, I've never seen Ellen Page, but I imagine she's relatively petite and slender.
Yes, incredibly so.
They're all actress-shaped.
Right.
Yes.
Vaguely actress-shaped.
Right.
Yes.
There were some slightly more muscular women, but certainly still all very small.
Well, I believe a lot of the skaters that don't have speaking parts were actually TXRD and TRG skaters from Austin that played derby.
Cool.
But what on earth was I saying? Oh, so people think, you're small, you're little, you should jam. But one of the smallest people in our league, Polly Punching Pocket, is also one of our best blockers.
I love that.
The same thing kind of happens with, you're bigger, you should block. That makes the most sense. But we see, you know, Scald Eagle is a jammer for Denver and is one of the best jammers in the sport. And she's like 6'1"?
Holy cow.
She's 6 foot.
Freight Train.
She's huge. Yeah, or Fright Train is probably about my height and is very sturdy and very curvy.
Probably
she skates
like
for Texas.
200 pounds,
yeah,
just
and
a beast.
She's incredible. And so it's really neat to see the different body types, not just at the lower levels, but at the Division I, you know, top 10 teams in the world levels. Women who work out, who do cardio for endurance, not for looks, who lift weights for strength, not for looks, and to still have all these different body types is super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Alrighty, guys, we are going to leave you with our trivia question, then go to break, and when we come back, we will wrap up our interview with our lovely guests. But the trivia question this week is, what year was roller derby invented as a sport? We'll come back to you with the answer.
Ooh.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back. That was Florence and the Machine with Cosmic Love.
It was a good song.
Yes.
Yeah. Florence is always an excellent choice.
I love that. Is it Kiss with a Fist?
Oh, yeah. That is a good song.
That's one of my skate amp up songs. Like one of my warm up songs.
Heck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, we are going to... Oh, wait. No, the trivia question.
Yeah, don't forget it.
The trivia.
Every week, guys. Every week I come back and I go, let's keep talking. And I completely forget to answer your trivia question. The question was, what year was the sport of roller derby invented? And there was a little bit of discussion about that in here. But we'll leave the answer we're rolling with is 1935. It was invented by... Ooh, I lost it. Leo Seltzer. And apparently his son is still around on the
Still alive
derby
and
scene.
Ye old Jerry Seltzer.
He would not appreciate that.
I would also like to add sports.
Sports.
Please
Nice.
Apparently we got a shock jock.
Yeah, so it was invented in 1935, and then in 1937, there were some changes to the rules that allowed a little more physical contact, so probably made it more like the sport that it is today.
And then less like the sport that it was.
Yes, less like the sport that it turned into, but more like the sport that it is today. Alrighty, guys. So, we'll start with a fun question. I wanted to know how y'all got your roller derby names.
Ooh.
Do you choose those? Someone else choose those for you?
So I'm actually on my second name because
I am as well. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'll tell you my story.
Learning about each other.
Friends.
So my first name, so I was a pastry chef for about I was in the cake biz for like 8 or 9 years and kind of hated it. So my first name was Mace of Cakes, like the old show Ace of Cakes.
Yeah.
But most people don't know about that show anymore. So I would always have to be like, like Ace of Cakes.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. So everyone called me Cake. And when I got out of doing cake jobs, I was like, I would like to also change my name because I'm transitioning into teaching. And so it was kind of a sloppy thing where I was like, I want to change my name. And it was just like a weird Facebook thread where we were like, my name should be Snacks. And I was like, it should be Snack Trap. It was because of that video of the little girl that goes, Snacks!
You guys have probably seen it. And if you haven't, it's the funniest thing you'll ever see. So you should watch it. And she's walking around with, you've seen this? And she goes, oh, Snacks! Snacks!
We'll link to it.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
We'll
link you to it. You'll appreciate it.
We have the whole internet at our disposal.
Yes. Anyway, so that's why we sometimes say Snacks, which I think she's over. But.
I love it.
I love it. It's good. I actually have a graphic on my computer that I keep meaning to turn into a t-shirt that has that poor little girl's face and Snack. THNAKTH.
Snacks.
Yeah, so my name is now Snack Trap, mostly because everyone wanted to call me Snack.
That's a great story.
And I eat a lot.
Oh, same.
That's about it.
Yeah.
So tell me your story that I didn't know about, because apparently we're not friends at all.
So my first name, it was like a big deal to me because I love puns, and I was just like, I must pick the best name.
Oh, I'm waiting for this pun name.
Of all the names. Well, the best name is the name that I have now. Yes, prepare for disappointment, because I did not care for my first name, and I changed it before I ever even skated in my first tournament. It was Bella DeBrawl.
Oh, okay.
There's actually a well-known, been around for a long time Texas skater named Bella DeBall, which I wasn't aware of initially. And people called me Bella, and Bella just does not fit me.
Sure.
And
But you're so pretty.
after my first 6 months in Derby, I was out for an unrelated surgery, and during that time, I was like, I really don't want to come back with Bella DeBrawl. I don't like the name; it doesn't work for me. So I was sitting around with a couple friends, one that skates for us and one that refs for us, and trying to do something X-Men related because I freaking love X-Men. I've always loved X-Men.
Mood, okay. Heck yeah, we should talk about that.
So I have Storm actually tattooed on my leg, and we were trying to think of some sort of X-Men pun. And I'm a professor here at OU. I love to flex. I love puns. I love X-Men. So we kind of, as a group, came up with Professor Flex, and that's
which is awesome. And I can't even believe that I didn't link that to the X-Men until you said something about it, because huge fan.
Yeah, it works on multiple levels for me. That makes me really happy. It's the best name for me I could come up with. So.
It's good. I like it.
Yes.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
I forgot.
Sorry, I'm suddenly like really excited about this because I'm all about the X-Men.
Derby names are really fun, and sometimes you'll be like watching Derby. Well, I'll be watching Derby. Not everyone is like must watch playoffs, must drive to Dallas and see B champs. But sometimes you'll be watching Derby and you're just like, oh, that is a good one.
Yeah, I was on the track a few weeks ago at this tournament that we've mentioned, about to start a jam, and I couldn't stop giggling because the announcer said Legs Benedict, and I just lost it, and I'm trying to like get serious, and I'm just like Legs Benedict. That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's honestly how I felt about whenever she introduced herself. Those characters we were talking about, the two coaches who were like, mine's Jabba the Slut. I was like, yes.
It's also the way she says it, like,
yeah.
Jabba the
very
Slut.
proud.
Incredibly proud of that name. Alrighty, so I'm gonna ask a harder question now. So in the film, there was a lot of sexualization surrounding the roller derby players, teammates. As we've mentioned many times tonight, it's a lot about them kind of being a show. They're wearing the fishnets, and the announcer, played by Jimmy Fallon, also contributed to making it really sexual. When they would brawl, he'd be like, oh, this is so hot.
I forgot about that until now, and now I remember being like, I don't want to do that.
So do you guys feel like there's I know we were talking about how you guys, there's not all the tutus and the fishnets and all that jazz. You don't feel like you're on a show, but do you feel like there's any stereotypes about roller derby that involve like sexualization?
I think that there definitely are, and you can, whenever older folks come to our bouts, some of the questions that they ask us, it's usually something related to, do we hit people in the face or trip people, or it's, do you wear those short skirts or whatever. And so I definitely,
we gonna see a cat fight?
Yeah, do you guys like to fight? Whatever.
Gross.
Yeah. So that is definitely still there, although I think that the sport overall is moving away from that, at least away from what I would consider to be almost the forced sexualization of the earlier iterations of derby, where you wore fishnets because it was expected, and you wore a short skirt with maybe underwear underneath, maybe not, because it was expected and it was part of the spectacle, and it's what people came to see. And now, as Snacks mentioned earlier, we have a much more athletic look that is expected of us. We do have options and ways of expressing our sexuality depending on the skater, what makes them feel comfortable and what makes them feel empowered. So we have women in our league that skate every bout in a full face of makeup and bright lipstick, because that's, to them, that's their battle, makeup. That's their fate, their war paint. In fact, one of our skaters, Emma C. Hammer, refers to her lipstick as her war paint. She always has this bright red lipstick on, and it's just a signature of hers. But in terms of other ways of the sexualization, we're definitely moving away from that, I think, overall.
Just like naturally, as we become more athletic, as we become more competitive. I think it just, no one wants, like, I wore fishnets once to a bout, and I fell and got the worst burn on my skin ever.
Oh, no,
like,
yeah.
It's not very practical.
Sure.
Like, it was fun, and it was kind of part of, the feminism of the time. It kind of came out of the punk scene, and, you know, that was kind of its own, don't tell me what to do with my body. I'm going to wear this short skirt. I'm going to rip up my, rip the bottom of this off and show the bottom of my boobs and do whatever I want. Like, that was its own thing at the time, but I think Derby is just moving in a different direction.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was also kind of curious because I feel like, I don't know, maybe this is just my own perception, but there's kind of a binary to that, right? So I was wondering if you guys ever in your personal lives or, any of your teammates who had come into something, where people are like, oh, you do roller derby, that's such a tough sport, you guys are so masculine and, that's not very ladylike, that's not, very feminine and sexy.
There is this sort of strange, it's not really Madonna and the whore, it's more like the butch and the whore dichotomy, that people either see it as highly sexualized or highly butch, and
you're either doing it for the attention of men or you're gay.
Yeah, or you're doing it because you secretly want to be a man. And it is kind of a strange thing because you have to field both of those questions, which seems so opposite, and yet you're asked with relative frequency because it's not considered, but often seen as a man's sport because so many other full contact sports are largely played by men.
Which is what I think makes roller derby so, I mean, I know there is men's roller derby, but I think that's what makes roller derby so
It's one of the
awesome.
Only sports where it's like there is a men's sport, but when we talk about roller derby, you're like the main branch of it is a women's sport.
Yeah.
There's always like football and then women's football. There's like derby and then men's derby.
Yeah.
Which is like this little subset.
Yeah. It's
like,
kind of fun.
Oh, you play Murda. Oh, okay.
Yeah. The men's roller derby association's called Murda.
That's kind of
it kind of sounds like murder a bit. So
they like it.
We actually have a league here that I've been doing some coaching for recently, but it's not nearly as widespread as women's roller derby, and it attracts a very different kind of athlete, I've found as well.
But I think as far as people, I guess trying to defeminize me because I do these seemingly masculine things. It's always a really cool opportunity to have conversations about like gender dynamics and like what my feminism is, or like how I present myself, and like, well, I feel more feminine when I am, feel stronger.
Preach.
Yeah. So I always have a really good time when those conversations do come up. Like, they don't make me uncomfortable because I get to have, really earnest conversations with people about what their expectations for what women should do and what men should do are, and kind of get to break down those binaries.
There was something that was very familiar to me, that masculine, butch, quote-unquote, perception, having played about a decade of softball as a kid and then throughout high school, because softball is one of those sports that is often seen, for whatever reason, as a butch-leaning sport.
Yeah,
right?
I've never really understood that, but that's definitely a stereotype I've encountered.
Right, and sometimes those stereotypes can end up being self-fulfilling, that because something has that reputation, it draws in people who are more gender fluid or who identify with a gender that's different than what they were born with.
Feels like a safe space.
And it feels like a safe space, and so a lot of times that a sport can get that reputation, or any community can get that reputation, and then it becomes self-fulfilling, which is also kind of an interesting aspect. It's like, well, did you get into derby because you were lesbian? Well, no, but there are a lot of lesbians in roller derby, and that's okay.
Have you ever, in your time playing roller derby, have you ever encountered any like severe obstacles that made you not want to continue with it?
So I don't think it hasn't been anything about the sport itself.
Right.
There hasn't been anything that's made me want to stop playing or being involved in derby. It's a pretty big time commitment, especially in the capacity in which I want to participate in Derby.
Right.
I always want to be not every Derby league, but our Derby league and all of the Derby leagues that I have been involved in are nonprofits, and so everyone is in some capacity responsible for also running the league. You're on a committee, and I always tend to think that I can do way more, and I want to be more involved, and I want to do more stuff, and I have these big dreams, and I get really wrapped up in the democracy of Derby and wanting just to be super involved and get everyone else involved.
That's a whole other side of it. I don't even think we thought about.
It is. Yeah. There are some leagues that are like owned, like people own the league, like they have owners that pay for things and all that jazz, and that's weird to me. But most of that, like we're a certified nonprofit. We take donations that are tax deductible. Just if anyone's listening that has some money that's weighing them down.
Sponsorship.
As an aside. Yeah, so there is that time commitment, and like I said, I commit quite a bit of my personal time to like training and stuff just because that's the level of Derby that I enjoy. So when I was trying to finish school and working a lot, it was really hard to balance both of those. And my like emotional relationship to Derby got really hard because of that, just because I was trying to fit everything in and I wasn't like actually enjoying all of the things.
Right.
So I took a leave of absence for a while, but even then I was still like volunteering. I was a non-skating official. Just because you don't want to skate or don't feel like you can skate doesn't mean you can't be a part of the Derby community. If you're out there listening and you're like, this Derby thing sounds really cool, but skating isn't for me. We also have non-skating officials who are one of our most beloved groups of people who we couldn't do what we do without them. So
time our penalties and keep our stats for us and coach. We have 5 coaches in our league right now, so there's lots of ways that you can get into Derby and be part of a league and part of this community without having to strap on rolly shoes.
Sure. Wheelie shoes.
I love the term wheelie shoes.
I know. Every time I get stressed out about something, I'm like, I'm wearing wheelie shoes. That's my like trip word to get me out of a bad mental state is got wheelie shoes on.
Or when I'm taking things too seriously, I'm like, I am playing a sport where I'm rolling around with 8 wheels with a helmet on. This is the silliest
touching
thing
people with my butt
humans have ever done. Yeah, why am I taking this too seriously?
It's great. Yes, so that was probably the only time that I was like, maybe this thing just isn't for me. But now my life is very different, and I have much more time and space for Derby to do the Derby that I like in the capacity that I like.
I think the same, the things that can kind of set you back are the things that would set you back with any hobby that you invest 10 plus hours a week in.
Right.
Which is my personal circumstances have changed. My financial circumstances have changed. I'm moving. I'm pregnant. I'm this, I'm that. And sometimes that can move people away from Derby. Sometimes it's temporary. Sometimes it's permanent. Injuries, of course, set people back. But for the most part, nothing has ever made me go, I don't want to play this sport anymore, other than a brief 15 seconds of complete frustration at something stupid that I then get over.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. I hope that I will be physically fit enough to do this forever.
Yeah.
We'll get bionic limbs and stuff.
You had asked previously about age minimums and maximums. There's no age maximum. We actually have several skaters that are in their mid-40s in our league that have been playing for years.
We had skaters at my old league who were in their mid and late 50s.
Yeah. That's
so impressive.
dope. Yeah, super dope.
Alrighty, guys. Well, we're gonna wrap it up, but I do want to ask. You guys mentioned there's like a training league or training session in December. You want to get a little more information about that?
Yeah. So we're actually in the middle of one right now. We usually do 2 a year because they are 12 weeks long, and so we actually have times in our rink that are solely dedicated to building our new recruits up. So we are in the middle of one right now. They're actually about to finish and test out in their skills here in a few weeks. We'll start another one usually in January. So we do a spring new recruits that starts in January. If you're interested, you can like us on Facebook, Oklahoma Victory Dolls Roller Derby, and you'll get notifications of any events that are coming up. We are in our off season right now, or at least our low season, where we are training but not actively bouting, because we generally bout in spring and summer. But that new recruits class is also open for anyone interested in participating with the league, whether it's in a skating capacity, a referee, a non-skating official, if you're interested in learning about the sport to coach. Any of that can be discussed at the new recruits class or earlier. We are recruiting officials year round. So.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. It has been an incredible pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And we are going to play you guys out with some No Doubt.
Woo!
Hello, guys. Welcome back. If you were just joining us, this is the Pop Culture Feminists. I am one of the hosts, Scout.
And I am the other host, Lily. I almost said Scout again. My name is not Scout. There's not
shame.
two Scout. What if our names were both Scout? That would be
good.
A weird coincidence.
The Scout Show.
But
Scout
it's not.
Squared.
No.
We had some awesome guests on the show earlier. We had Professor Flex and Snack Trap from the OKC Victory Dolls. We've been talking about roller derby and Whip It. And if you are just joining us, they're talking about they're going to have a new recruit session probably sometime in January. You can follow them on Facebook to find out about that. But for now, if y'all remember from last week, we were talking about female TV icons. And our show was cut a little short because of the OU hockey game, which, by the way, woohoo, go OU hockey. They beat Missouri State 5-4. So, there's a lot of hockey games going on. We broadcast them right on this channel. And sometimes we simulcast them on TV, the OU TV station.
Yep.
So join in for that. Catch them doing their thing, representing OU.
Yeah.
Anyway, last week we were talking about female TV icons, and we had to leave out our last one and maybe I don't want to say most interesting, but
but an interesting one.
A very interesting one, which would be Mary Tyler Moore. If you missed out last week, we talked about Oprah and Ellen DeGeneres and Lucille Ball and Carol Burnett. Yes. But we didn't quite make it to Mary Tyler Moore.
Yes.
Which, fun fact, she was actually on the Ellen Show as well. Not the Ellen DeGeneres Show.
Right.
But the Ellen Show, which was the sitcom before the talk show.
Right.
And we were talking about how Oprah had once made an appearance on that show as well.
Yes.
But, so did Mary Tyler Moore.
Yes.
Anyway, so let's dive in, shall we?
Splash. That was the sound of me diving in.
Oh my goodness. So she started out wanting to be a dancer. We give origin stories for all these ladies because, I just find it interesting how they came to be such the icons that they are.
Absolutely.
So she started out wanting to be a dancer, and
didn't we all?
She got a gig as an elf.
An elf?
A dancing elf.
Wow.
For Hot Point appliances. I don't even know if that's a brand anymore.
I don't think so. I guess their elf advertising wasn't very effective.
Yikes. Anyway, so she got fired from that job. Well, not fired. Let go. Because she was pregnant, and they were like,
yeah, we can't
let you dance anymore.
Oh, we can't let you be a pregnant elf.
Yeah. They said it's bad for advertising or something. Lame.
Yeah, well, I think during that time you wouldn't
yeah.
really see. Because, I mean, now actresses on stuff are pregnant all the time and they either hide it or they put it in the show, but I don't think they did that as much back then.
Well, plus with advertising, it's a little bit different.
Definitely. Yeah.
And then she did some, it says, anonymous modeling gigs and got a... Oh, this is actually one of my favorite parts of this story is that she auditioned for a role on a TV show, but she was turned down. However, the guy that turned her down for that role later got her the gig on the Dick Van Dyke Show, which was her breakout starring role, which really brought her into the public eye, because I guess he did like her. He just didn't like her for that role.
Right.
But whenever they were auditioning for the Dick Van Dyke Show, The Wife, I believe, which is a very popular show if y'all aren't familiar, was a very popular show. He said, we should get that girl with 3 names.
Yeah.
Which makes me laugh. I love that.
Yeah,
anyway, so... she got on that show and that really launched her career.
She won an Emmy Award.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe more than one, but I'm not...
By the way, she was on that show from 1961 to 1966.
Yep.
And, I found that really weird that, like, she was so much younger than Dick Van Dyke.
Right.
It's like almost 30 years younger than him, and she was playing his wife. I mean, that totally happens now in Hollywood, which will tangent real quick. Man, is that a problem in Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know, female love interests are, like, almost universally required to be in their 20s or maybe their early 30s.
Yeah.
But you know, after they get into their mid to late 30s, they can't play like the love interest anymore.
Yeah, even for a man of the same age.
Right. Or older. They can't even play a love interest for someone, you know, a man in like their 40s.
Right.
It's insane. Anyway, that's just a quick little aside about the problems in Hollywood today.
Yeah.
One of the many. But anyway, back to Mary Tyler Moore. So after she was done with the Dick Van Dyke Show, she actually managed to get her own show called The Mary Tyler Moore Show, which, as we were talking about, seems to be a huge theme. You know, we've got the Ellen DeGeneres Show.
Yeah. The Oprah Winfrey Show.
The Oprah Winfrey Show. The Carol Burnett Show. The only thing we didn't get was the Lucille Ball Show. But
her
she
name
did have
was in it.
I Love Lucy, so yes.
Yeah.
She was there. Anyway, I find that kind of inspiring, actually, that they all just, they got their names there. They weren't just...
Yeah, that seemed to be a theme, whether your character's name was actually that name or not. It was just, this is the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and you're playing Roberta. It's your character's... That wasn't her name.
Right.
But that seemed to happen a lot. But yeah, they... it was actually her and her husband, Grant Tinker, pitched the show to CBS, and they picked up a half-hour sitcom called The Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Yeah, and if those of you aren't familiar, that's also an incredibly popular show. Sorry, I just blanked out for a second.
Yeah.
About a newsroom, a television newsroom. It's a very good show. A lot of good comedy in there.
And I guess the cool thing about it at the time was that it featured a woman in the workplace, a working woman who's
kind of an outspoken woman.
Yeah, whose life wasn't necessarily centered on romance,
the nuclear family,
or finding a family. I mean, she did have love interests,
right,
but
that wasn't center
her,
of the show.
Yeah, it wasn't at the show's center, which
her career was.
Yeah, which at the time was very, very radical and definitely a departure from her role on the Dick Van Dyke Show, which was as the mother in a nuclear family.
And so the Mary Tyler Moore Show actually won 29 Emmys during its 7 seasons, which was a record at the time.
Mm-hmm.
However, Frasier broke that record in 2002 by getting 30.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mary Tyler Moore.
Still, that's quite a while.
Oh, absolutely, man. So, okay, we started this off by saying that she was one of the more interesting, or a very interesting one, and the reason I said that, this totally stood out to me, was that she was actually a very politically conservative woman.
Right.
You know, and all the other 4 women that we talked about,
were pretty liberal.
Rather liberal, yeah, you know, and I mean, I think, at least for myself, being a left-leaning type of person, I kind of associate this sort of female TV, you know, media icon with being, you know, look, they're very groundbreaking. They push for their own rights.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's just kind of a very, in my mindset, a liberal thing. So I was really shocked to find out, what was it? Man, okay, oh yeah, so this wasn't nearly the exciting part, but she did endorse Nixon, and then she endorsed Jimmy Carter. She was a huge fan of Bill O'Reilly, who, kind of a he who shall not be named anymore, but she said that, oh yeah, in 2009 she identified herself as a libertarian centrist who watches Fox News. She said she would have campaigned for John McCain, which, I mean, I have a lot of respect for John McCain, so I mean, I can see that. It was just really funny. She said that she got most of her news from Fox News, which is known as a rather
sort of bias. Well, not bias, but right-leaning news source.
Yeah. And of course, there are a lot of left-leaning news sources as well. Yes. So I mean, there's definitely a skew there.
Yeah.
But, oh yeah, this was what it was. I think she was recruited to join the feminist movement in the 70s by Gloria Steinem, who huge, you know, feminist role model. But she didn't want to because she didn't like
she
Steinem's
didn't agree
views
with that kind of viewpoint.
Yeah. She said that, you know, women were, at least in some part of their lives, obligated to be mothers, and that they
weren't obligated to have a career or be a career woman, which is interesting because,
you know, she clearly was a career woman.
She was clearly a career woman.
Yeah.
She's also a mother, but also a career woman.
Well, it was just interesting because, you know, she, like, as we were just talking about, she had this very groundbreaking sort of sitcom where it's finally a story about a woman in the workplace, and not literally every episode is about her just trying to find love and trying to get married and, you know, all that jazz we've always been seeing. So I guess that's what shocked me the most about seeing that she said, you know, women don't owe themselves a career. They need to be mothers first. I was kind of like, all right. That's your opinion, Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't really agree with the having to be mothers part, but I mean, I guess I can respect that, you know, all women don't have to have careers, and I think that some people associate feminism with, like, the total abandonment of motherhood and family, which if that's really what you want to do, if that's what you choose and that's what empowers you personally, then absolutely be a stay-at-home mom and be a wife and a mother. Like, yeah, but that shouldn't be the assumed first choice and the assumed what you're gonna do.
Right. Yeah, just a quick FYI for all y'all listeners out there, feminism is about choices.
Mm-hmm. And equality.
All about, and equality.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
there's no right way to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so for any of y'all laboring under the misconceptions that feminism means, because I know that's a very, very, very common misconception of that, you have to abandon the nuclear family stereotypes. You can't be a stay-at-home mom, but heck yeah, you can. Yeah. You want to be a stay-at-home mom? You're going to be an awesome one.
Yeah.
Yee. You want to be a career woman? Yee.
You want to do both? Yee. But I think there's also we're reaching into an issue of women now are expected to do everything, to be a career woman and to be the head of the household, to raise the kids, to do the household tasks. So
that's the other thing.
That's the superwoman.
You don't have to be a superwoman.
Yeah, you don't have to do every single thing.
No, you don't.
You can try if you want to.
Absolutely.
If that's what you want to do.
But you can do both. You can do one. You can do the other. You can do neither.
You can just do no, I'm kidding. You should probably do something, but...
What? Don't tell them how to live their lives, Lily.
I know.
Yeah. You want to... Actually, this kind of touches on something we were talking about with the roller derby community, You want to dress sexy and, really show a lot of skin and wear a lot of makeup because that empowers you. Yeah, girl. Do it. You want to do more covered and, less makeup because you, love your natural face and that feels like, that empowers you. Then do it, man. That's the ideal. That's how it be.
That is how it be. Even if we don't always see that in our pop culture, which is why we kind of have this show.
Oh, that is absolutely why we have this show, because I know that even in my personal life as just a 21-year-old from Oklahoma, Norman, Oklahoma, let me put on my southern accent real quick.
Southern accent.
You have that Texas Belle accent, and
Texas,
I have
y'all.
Oklahoma backwoods.
Yeehaw.
Even in my tiny little world, I have run into so many different people's ideas, and a lot of them misconceptions about what feminism is. They's like, oh, you hate men, you don't want them to hold the door open for you, you'll get mad at them for that. And I'm like, no.
I just want them to treat me respectfully.
Yeah, that's like a whole some of it. And respect diversity, not only within women but within
with anybody,
races and classes and intersectionality. People, if you don't know the definition of that word, go look it up right now, because I promise you that is we didn't have a woman of the week this week, Lily. I'm having a word of the week.
Yeah,
intersectionality. That's our word of the week. It means people are a compilation of all of these things that make up their unique selves. They are made up by their gender identity, their sexuality, their class, their race. And that makes each person a unique person, and that's why you can't make assumptions about broad group of people.
Because there is no homogenous group.
And even if, let's say, okay, you narrow all those down to one each list down to one thing, and you have this person who's a unique person, and but you're gonna have a bunch of other people who fit into all those categories as well, but they're still all different. Yeah,
and I think part of intersectionality too is that you can't turn off different aspects of your identity, because I navigate the world as a white woman, and I can't turn off my whiteness, and I can't turn off my womanhood and just be looked at as white or as a woman, because that ignores other power structures that
Absolutely.
it ignores privileges I may have in some areas and oppressions that I may face in other areas, which I think is the huge thing about intersectionality, and which also makes it too divisive and too hard to play like okay, is this group more oppressed than this group, or is this group more oppressed than this group? Because if you have a white woman who's oppressed because of her gender and you have a black man who's oppressed because of his race, it's pointless to go, okay, which person's more oppressed by our society, because
it's an unfortunate game that people get into.
Yeah, that's not helping either of those people groups further their positions.
No, absolutely not. Okay, and on that cheery note, we'd like to thank you for joining us this week, especially tuning in and catching our very special guests. If you did happen to miss the majority of this show and you're just catching the end, it will be up. The live stream will be up on our Facebook page. You can rewatch that later, and we will have this up on YouTube, and a link to that will be on our Facebook page. Yeah, so thank you guys for joining us.
Yes.
Catch us next week. We always love seeing you guys. Yeah, follow us on Facebook. That's all I have to say about that.
Yep.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys.